My name is Claire, I'm 29. And 7 days before my wedding, I opened my front door and saw the one person I had trained my heart to forget. It was Ethan Walker. Not in a photo, not in a memory, not in some late-night spiral when you scroll too far back and hate yourself for it. He was standing on my porch. He was real, with the same eyes that once looked at me like I was the only place he ever wanted to land. For a second, my body reacted before my brain did. My throat tightened, and my hands went cold. And something in my chest, something I'd buried under years of "I'm fine," shifted like it had never actually died. I didn't move, I didn't speak. I just stared at him like the universe had made a mistake. Because Ethan wasn't supposed to exist in my life anymore. Not after everything. Not after the house, and not after Tokyo. Not after the way he left me standing in our own kitchen. Our kitchen, like I was just another thing he could pack away when it got inconvenient. But there he was. And the first thing he said wasn't an apology. It wasn't even a question. It was the most dangerous 2 words he could possibly choose. "Hello, Claire." The way he said my name was soft, careful, familiar, hit me harder than I expected. I swallowed. My voice came out smaller than I wanted. "What are you doing here?" He looked past me for half a second like he could still picture what my life looked like behind that door. Like he still had the right. Then he said quietly, "I heard you're getting married." I felt my stomach drop. Of course he heard. This town isn't huge and people talk. And I'd been trying so hard to let this wedding week be clean and joyful. A new chapter. Instead, it felt like someone had poured ink into the first page. I tightened my grip on the edge of the door. So, he inhaled like he was bracing for impact. "I needed to see you." I actually laughed. Not because it was funny, because it was insane. "You needed to see me," I repeated. "Now? A week before my wedding." His jaw flexed. "I'm not here to ruin anything." That sentence landed wrong, because it meant he understood he could. Or, at least he thought he could. It made my skin crawl. I stepped outside and pulled the door almost shut behind me, like my home needed to be protected from him. From the past, from everything he could stir up with just one look. He watched me do it. And something flickered in his expression. Pain. Maybe, or guilt. Or maybe just the realization that I wasn't the same girl who used to run to him. Not anymore. "Claire," he said again. "Please. Just give me 5 minutes." I should have said no. I should have walked back inside. I should have called Daniel immediately and told him. He's here, he's back, and it's happening. But my feet didn't move. Because when someone breaks you quietly, you spend years wondering if you imagine the sound. And when they show up again, part of you wants proof that it was real. That you weren't crazy. That your pain had a reason. I crossed my arms. 5 minutes, I said. That's it. He nodded like he didn't deserve even that. And then he said the sentence that made my breath stop completely. I drove past the house. My heart slammed. Not because it was romantic. Because it was personal. Because that house wasn't just a building. It was the life we almost had. The life we did have. The life he walked away from like it was a draft he could throw in the trash. I felt heat rise up my neck. "You shouldn't be anywhere near that house." "I know. Do you know what it did to me?" I snapped. "To see it every day after you left? To live in a place you built with your hands, then watch you choose a plane ticket over everything inside it." His face tightened like I'd struck something deep. "I didn't come to fight," he said, voice low. "No," I said. "You came to talk. You came to say something that makes you feel better." He looked like he wanted to deny it, but he didn't. He just stood there, silent, and the silence was its own confession. My hand started shaking, and I hated it. I hated that after all these years he could still pull a reaction out of me like a thread. I took a breath. "Say what you came to say," I told him. "And then leave." His eyes met mine. And for the first time since he arrived, I saw fear. Not fear of me. Fear of losing the last chance to rewrite the story he already ruined. "Claire," he said, barely above a whisper. "I made the wrong choice." There it was. The line every woman hears in a story like this. The line men save for when it's too late. The line that always sounds like regret until you remember what it cost you. I stared at him, and my chest felt too tight for air. "You made it 6 years ago," I said. He swallowed. "I know. And you made it again every day after." I continued. "Every day you didn't call. Every day you didn't come back. Every day you let me live in that house alone." His eyes dropped. I thought I was doing what I had to. "And now?" I asked. "What changed?" He didn't answer right away. He looked at my hand. My left hand, where my engagement ring caught the light. And then he said something that made the entire world feel like it tilted. "I saw you last week." My stomach turned. "At the bookstore," he added. "On Maple Street." I remembered that day. I'd been standing in the wedding section, holding a planner, trying to choose between 2 fonts for the invitations. I'd felt watched. I turned around once. But there was no one there. My skin went cold. "You followed me?" "No," his voice came fast. "No, I didn't. I swear. I saw you. And I froze. I didn't think you'd be right there." And you decided my wedding week was the time to fix your guilt? His shoulders rose and fell with a slow breath. I decided I couldn't live with myself if I didn't tell you the truth. I laughed again, bitter. What truth, Ethan? He lifted his head, and his eyes looked glassy, like he'd been holding something back for a long time. The truth, he said, voice breaking just slightly, is that I built that house for you. I felt my throat tighten again, but this time it wasn't shock. It was anger, pure and sharp anger. You didn't build it for me, I said. You built it for us. And then you left it. He nodded once. I know. And I need you to understand why. My whole body tensed, because the last thing I needed was him trying to make leaving me sound noble. I stared him down. You have 1 minute left, I said. He took a breath. And then he said the words that made my blood run cold, because they sounded exactly like the poison he used to justify everything. My firm told me I could have one thing, he said. Either I became the architect they were investing in, or I became someone tied down. He paused, like it still hurt to admit. They said no distractions, no family and no wedding. No life that wasn't work. I felt sick. And you listened. His mouth opened, closed. Then he whispered, I chose them. And my heart did something awful. It didn't just break. It remembered. Before Tokyo, before everything fell apart, there was the house. Most people start their future with a plan. We started ours with a drawing. Ethan had sketched it one night at the kitchen table of our tiny rented apartment. A 2-story house, large windows, a balcony that faced the trees behind the property. At the top of the page he wrote 2 words. Claire's view. I laughed when I saw it. Why my view? I asked. He didn't even look up from the sketch. Because wherever you are, that's where I want to build. At the time, it felt like the most romantic thing anyone had ever said to me. What I didn't know then was that he meant it literally. Because 2 years later, that house actually existed. It took everything we had. Savings, loans, and weekends covered in dust and paint. Ethan didn't just design it. He built half of it with his own hands. I remember the day the windows were installed. We sat on the unfinished floor in the living room eating takeout noodles straight from the cartons. No furniture, no lights yet, just moonlight pouring through the glass. Ethan looked around the empty room and smiled. Can you imagine this in 10 years? I leaned against his shoulder. What do you see? A kid's bike in the driveway, he said. A dog that sheds too much. And you yelling at me because I forgot to take the trash out again. I laughed. Sounds realistic. That house wasn't just a project. It was our future, slowly turning into something real. Every wall had a memory, and every corner had a plan. We moved in during early autumn. The trees outside the balcony turned orange and gold. I remember standing in the kitchen the first morning, holding a mug of coffee, and watching Ethan outside measuring something in the yard. I asked him later what he was doing. Planning the garden, he said. For what? He grinned. For the life we're going to live here. At the time, nothing felt more certain than that sentence. And that's what made the night he told me about Tokyo so much worse. Because he didn't just leave me. He left the house. The kitchen we built. The balcony where we watched storms roll in. The hallway where we had once argued about whether the walls should be white or gray. He left the future that house represented. Like it was just optional. When he walked out the door that last night, I stood in the living room for a long time. The house felt enormous suddenly. Too quiet and too empty. Every room echoing with something that used to be there. I stayed there another 8 months. Long enough to realize something painful. The house still looked exactly like our dream. But without him inside it, it felt like a museum of a life that never happened. So I sold it, packed everything into boxes, and tried to start over. That's when Daniel entered my life. And slowly, piece by piece, I stopped thinking about Ethan. Or, at least I thought I did, until he showed up on my porch and reminded me that the house we built together still existed. Still standing and still full of ghosts. The night Ethan told me about Tokyo, we were standing in our kitchen. Same kitchen we had built together. Same place where we once planned our future. And he looked like someone about to confess a crime. I got the fellowship, he said. I remember smiling. Because for years that had been his dream. A year? I asked. He hesitated. 2 years. Still manageable, I thought. We'll figure it out, I said. Then he said the sentence that changed everything. They want me there alone. I frowned. What does that mean? He looked at the floor. They said if I accept the position, I need to be fully committed. Committed to what? To work. I crossed my arms. People in Tokyo have families, Ethan. This program is different. How? They don't want distractions. The word hit me immediately. Distractions? He finally looked up. They mean relationships. Marriage. Anything that splits focus. My stomach tightened. And what did you tell them? He didn't answer right away. And that silence was the loudest thing in the room. Ethan, I said slowly. What did you tell them? His voice dropped. I said yes. For a moment, I honestly thought I misunderstood. Yes, you'll go? Yes. Alone? Yes. The kitchen suddenly felt unfamiliar. Like I was standing in someone else's life. I looked around the room. The cabinets we installed. The table we carried inside together. The balcony door behind him. You built this house, I said quietly. I know. We planned a life here. I know. And you're choosing a job that literally requires you to pretend that life doesn't exist. He ran a hand through his hair. It's 2 years. That's not the point. This could change everything for my career. And what does it change for us? He didn't answer, because he already had. He left 3 weeks later. 1 suitcase, 1 quiet goodbye, and a house full of silence. Daniel entered my life almost a year later. Not dramatically and not like Ethan. Daniel was the opposite of chaos. We met through friends at a small birthday dinner. He wasn't loud. He wasn't trying to impress anyone. He just listened. And when he spoke, it mattered. The first thing I noticed about him was something simple. He showed up. If he said he'd call at 8, the phone rang at 8. If he planned dinner, he was already waiting outside. No disappearing and no emotional roller coaster, just stability. And after what Ethan left behind, stability felt like oxygen. 3 months ago, Daniel proposed. It happened during our evening walk by the lake. No big speech and no crowd. Just him, holding a small ring and asking, "Do you want to build a life with me?" Not chase one, not gamble on one. Build one, and together. And I said yes. Because for the first time in years the future felt safe. Which brings us back to the porch. To Ethan standing there. 6 years too late. I drove past the house, he said quietly. I felt my jaw tighten. You don't get to talk about that house. I know. Then don't. He nodded. But then he said something that made my chest tighten anyway. It's different now. I frowned. What is? The house. I stared at him. What are you talking about? He hesitated, then said the one thing I wasn't expecting. I bought it back. The words hit like a punch. You what? 2 years ago. My heart started racing. Why would you do that? His eyes met mine. Because it never stopped feeling like home. I shook my head immediately. Don't do that. Do what? Don't turn this into something romantic. I'm not trying to. Yes, you are. Silence stretched between us. Then he said quietly, I just wanted you to know, I never stopped thinking about the life we almost had. I took a deep breath. Because that sentence was dangerous. Not because it was beautiful, because it was late. You had 6 years, I said. He nodded. I know. And you chose every single one of them without me. His voice was barely above a whisper. I chose wrong. Ethan stood there for a few seconds, like he was forcing himself to say something he'd carried for years. Then he finally said it. I still love you. The words hung in the air between us. 6 years. 1 house and 1 life we almost had. And now, 4 words. I looked at him for a long moment. Not because I didn't know what to say, but because I realized something simple. I wasn't waiting for those words anymore. Years ago, I would have given anything to hear them. Now they felt like an echo from another life. You loved me enough to build a house, I said quietly. His eyes lifted, but not enough to stay in it. His shoulders dropped slightly. I know. He reached into his jacket and pulled out a folded piece of paper. I recognized it immediately. The drawing. The house. Large windows, balcony, and the same lines I could have recognized anywhere. I drew it again, he said. I shook my head slightly. You already built it once. He exhaled slowly. I thought success would feel bigger than love. It didn't. For a moment neither of us moved. Then I took a step back toward the door. Ethan, he looked up. You didn't lose me because of Tokyo. His brow tightened. You lost me because you believed a life without me was worth the risk. He nodded slowly, like it was a truth he had already learned the hard way. I opened the door. Goodbye, Ethan. He didn't try to stop me. Didn't argue. Didn't ask me to stay. He just stood there for a second, then quietly said, I hope he knows how lucky he is. And then he walked away. Saturday came quickly. The ceremony was small. Friends, family, and warm light filling the room. And Daniel waiting at the altar. When he saw me walking toward him, his entire face softened. Not nervous, just happy I was there. That's when I understood the difference between the two men. Ethan made life feel intense. Daniel made life feel safe. And sometimes the greatest love isn't the one that burns the brightest. It's the one that stays. Later that night, after the wedding, I emptied my purse onto the dresser. Found lipstick, phone, hairpins, and something folded. The drawing. My breath caught. I hadn't taken it. Ethan must have slipped it into my purse while we were standing on the porch. I unfolded it slowly. The same house, the same lines, but the title had changed. No longer Claire's View. Now it simply said, Home. And in the corner, in small handwriting, there was a note. 3 words. Take the view. I looked at it for a long time. Then folded it again. Not as regret, just as a reminder. That sometimes the love that breaks your heart is the one that teaches you how to choose the right future. So tell me honestly, what would you have done in my place? Would you have walked down the aisle with Daniel? Or taken one last chance with Ethan? If stories like this hit you, subscribe.